It all begins with a subtle perception, almost imperceptible, an inner movement that does not depend on external answers, but on a silent choice to give thanks before seeing. Most people go through life waiting for something to change in order to finally feel gratitude. But what if it's the other way around? What if it's gratitude, felt deeply with presence, that makes the invisible reorganize? There is a point where science and spirituality meet, and it is exactly there that what we call a miracle is born, not as a coincidence, but as a natural consequence of an aligned vibration. Gratitude, in this sense, is not a reaction. It is a creation. It is the act of tuning in to what has not yet arrived, but is already forming within your field. And the body feels it. The soul knows it, even if the mind still doubts. Perhaps you are going through a moment when everything feels suspended, as if life has pressed an invisible pause button. You wait for answers, for relief, for signs that you are on the right path. And while you wait, something inside you grows tired, because waiting also hurts. Waiting silences dreams. Waiting delays miracles. And what if I told you that the key to transforming this waiting into creation lies in how you feel, and not in what you still cannot see? Most people understand gratitude as a response, a thank you after something goes right. But that understanding is limited, because it is based on the idea that the world must change first, so we can feel afterward. Yet quantum physics, neuroscience, and the teachings of great spiritual masters reveal another reality. It is not the world that changes you. It is your inner field that changes the world. Bruce Lipton, a cell biologist and a reference in epigenetics, states that our emotions directly alter the body's chemistry, and that this chemistry, in turn, determines the activation or deactivation of genes. This means your body is not a passive receiver of events, but an active participant in the reality you experience. When you feel genuine gratitude, you change the biological environment where your cells live. And by changing that environment, you send a new command to your physiology, a command of healing, expansion, trust, a command of life. Neville Goddard, one of the great masters of creative imagination, said that feeling as if it were already real is the link between the invisible and the manifest. He was not speaking of positive thinking. He was speaking of deep feeling, of an inner state so vivid that the body already reacts as if what you desire were already here. And the body does not argue with what it feels. The body simply responds. That is why gratitude can no longer be treated as a mental exercise or an automatic checklist of thanks. It must become a coherent vibrational state, repeated with awareness until it transforms into a new emotional identity, a code, a quantum code. Today, I want to invite you to decode this code, to go beyond performative gratitude, the one that speaks but does not feel, and to access the power of creative gratitude, the one that vibrates first, that pulses in the invisible, that activates miracles not because it demands, but because it aligns. Throughout this video, you will understand how this practice, applied consistently for 7 days, can rewrite your emotional states, your perception of reality, and even the biology of your body. You will discover that miracles are not cosmic exceptions. They are coherent responses to elevated inner states. Gratitude is not a spiritual accessory. It is a biological mechanism. It is an energetic language. It is a magnetic field. And when you learn to inhabit it, you stop asking, and you start co-creating. Let us decipher what this means together. And perhaps, at the end of this path, you will no longer need to wait for miracles, because you will have become compatible with them. There is a kind of waiting that makes you sick, a waiting that slows down the soul. It is the invisible gap between desire and fulfillment, where most people remain paralyzed, believing they can only give thanks once something happens. But this logic, as common as it may seem, creates a vibrational field of absence, as if the body itself were saying, "It's not real yet." And the universe, which responds to vibration before words, echoes that same frequency. It hasn't arrived yet. What few realize is that gratitude is not the final step. It is the seed. It is the beginning of everything. To give thanks before seeing is not naivety. It is vibrational intelligence, because gratitude felt beforehand does not depend on what is out there. It depends on your inner decision to live in coherence with what you want to experience. And this coherence has a direct effect on your biology. Neuroscience already knows that the brain is malleable. Every thought, when repeated with emotion, strengthens specific synaptic connections. This means that by giving thanks for something that has not yet manifested, you are not merely pretending. You are reconditioning the brain to operate as if it were already part of your past. And when the brain believes, the body reacts. It releases chemistry. It reprograms habits. It modifies hormones. The body begins to live as if what you desire were already a memory. And that changes everything. Bruce Lipton explains that the inner environment, what you feel, think, and believe, is more decisive than the external environment. Your cells listen to your emotions, and if you live vibrating absence, even with positive words, your body responds with signals of scarcity, protection, survival. But when gratitude becomes your baseline state, even without evidence, a new biological environment is formed. And that environment attracts. It attracts because it resonates. The paradox is simple, yet profound. The more you give thanks for the invisible as if it were real, the more you collapse possibilities in the quantum field. Time, which seems linear, begins to bend to your vibration. Reality stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that responds to you. The frequency of anticipatory gratitude is not a technique. It is a vibrational invitation to the unified field, a silent call to what already is, even if it has not yet become visible. And when you align with that call, what once seemed distant begins to find its way back to you, because there is no more waiting. There is presence, and in presence, miracles feel at home. Behind the difficulty of feeling real gratitude lies a brain trained to survive, not to trust. The human mind, throughout evolution, was shaped to identify dangers, anticipate losses, avoid risks. It is an ancient mechanism, necessary in times of constant threat, but one that today has become a silent saboteur of inner peace. It is this mind that seeks proof, confirmation, guarantees, and while it waits for reality to change before allowing itself to give thanks, it perpetuates the same state of lack. Quantum gratitude demands something the conditioned brain fears: surrender without control. Feeling gratitude for something that has not yet manifested confronts rational logic, which has learned to depend only on what can be measured and proven. And that is where vibrational conflict begins. Because even if you say, "I trust," if the body is still addicted to the chemistry of doubt, demand, and dissatisfaction, the prevailing frequency will remain one of absence. Bruce Lipton explains that it is not genes that control your life, but the environment in which they are placed, and that environment is deeply influenced by what you feel. Recurring thoughts of scarcity, fear, or impatience not only reinforce negative neural connections, but also alter the biochemical field in which your cells operate. In other words, the absence of coherent gratitude is not just a spiritual issue. It is a biological environment that reinforces the very reality you wish to change. There is also another invisible factor: the brain's dopamine circuits. In a society addicted to immediate results, our mind has learned to associate gratitude only with reward. And when the return does not come quickly, the nervous system shifts into frustration, sabotaging the state of vibrational trust. Gratitude stops being a continuous vibration and becomes a bargaining chip. And in that bargaining, the miracle is delayed. But the body can also be trained. The brain can be reprogrammed. Just as we learn to fear, we can learn to trust. Small daily redirections of attention are capable of deactivating this cycle of self-sabotage. It is not about thanking generically. It is about noticing, feeling, identifying in the midst of chaos micro-frequencies of abundance already available. For 7 days, if you silence the automatic complaint, the one that arises even when unspoken, and replace it with a specific recognition of what is present, something begins to change. First, in the feeling. then in the body, and then in the field around you. Because what you acknowledge expands, and what you feel with coherence manifests. Real gratitude does not need applause. It needs presence. And presence, when cultivated consistently, reconditions the mind, deprograms scarcity, and opens space for the invisible to blossom. It is not about forcing gratitude. It is about learning to see again, and in seeing, transforming. Not all gratitude is real. Some are just words dressed in good intention but empty of presence. And the body knows. The body always knows when there is incoherence between what is said and what is felt. That is why many people, even while repeating gratitude mantras every day, remain stuck in patterns of pain, scarcity, and emotional repetition. Gratitude, when used as an attempt to ignore pain, turns into a mask, and no mask heals. Because a mask never touches the truth. There is a kind of positivity that does not set you free. It imprisons you. A need to appear evolved, enlightened, grateful all the time, even when inside everything is in ruins. This subtle denial of one's own vulnerability is not spirituality. It is control disguised as faith. And behind that control, there is fear. Fear of being weak, fear of being wrong, fear that the universe only responds to the strong and pure. But the universe does not respond to performance. It responds to vibration. And real vibration only emerges when you have the courage to be whole, even in pain. Greg Braden speaks about the importance of coherence between heart and mind. And coherence does not mean always being well. It means being whole. It means having the courage to feel what is present without pretending it doesn't hurt. True gratitude is born from presence, not denial. It does not require you to be happy. It only asks you to be truthful. Because it is in emotional truth that vibrational healing begins. There are silent signs of masked gratitude. When you constantly feel the need to say you are fine, even when you are not. When you feel guilty for feeling sadness. When you force a state of optimism to prove something to yourself or to others. When you cannot sit in silence with yourself without needing to justify. These are small internal tensions that reveal something is being hidden. And whatever is hidden continues to rule from behind the veil. Real gratitude is not anesthesia. It is alchemy. It does not deny pain. It transforms it. But for that, it must be felt with an open heart, even if wounded. When you stop running from what you feel, something shifts in the field. Pain ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a portal. Fear ceases to be an enemy and becomes a reminder that something inside you is ready to be embraced, no longer avoided. It is in this space of surrender, truth, and emotional humility that gratitude begins to bloom authentically, not as an empty mantra, but as a living frequency, a vibration that permeates the mind, the body, the soul. And in that vibration, there is no longer any need to prove anything. There is only the miracle of being whole. And whole, you become magnetic to everything that once seemed so distant. True gratitude does not happen only in thought. It happens in the body. It happens in the field. It is felt. That is why, for it to become a stable frequency, capable of creating realities, it takes more than intention. It requires involvement, presence, repetition, and a certain kind of vibrational delicacy that turns the gesture into a seed and the emotion into fertile ground. It all begins with the body. Before trying to feel gratitude, it is necessary to prepare the ground, to create an inner space where the emotion can take root with truth. The first stage of this process is sensory activation, a more conscious breath, a gentle touch on your own chest, a pause with closed eyes. When you do this with presence, the body begins to move out of defense and into safety. And safety is the soil where elevated emotions flourish. With the body more receptive comes the second stage, specific emotional repetition. It is not enough to say, "I am grateful." This gratitude must become an embodied memory. That is why you should choose 3 situations that have not yet happened, but that you deeply desire to experience. And instead of visualizing them as distant wishes, Bring them into the now. Imagine how it would feel if they were already real. Feel as if they had already happened, and give thanks, not as expectation, but as memory, a memory of the future already vibrating in the present. This practice is not fantasy. It is neural creation. Neville Goddard said, "Feel the wish fulfilled. Do not think of it. Feel it as a memory of the now." And science confirms it. The brain does not distinguish between the real and the vividly imagined with emotional coherence. The body responds to what you feel as truth. By repeating this experience with focus and emotion, you begin to shape a new vibrational identity, and it is this identity that attracts what resonates. The third stage is vibrational grounding. Studies on mental focus indicate that 17 seconds of coherent attention are enough to activate a new frequency in the energetic field. When you sustain the emotion of gratitude with presence and without distraction for small cycles of time, several times a day, you reinforce this new state as your own, not as effort, but as naturalness. And little by little, something shifts. Your biochemistry aligns with elevated states, your perception expands, your energy rises, and the invisible begins to move, because the quantum field does not respond to what you want, but to what you consistently vibrate. Gratitude, when practiced with presence, specificity, and emotional repetition, ceases to be a concept. It becomes code, it becomes portal, it becomes path. And on the right path, miracles stop being the exception. They become the expression. There is an intelligence behind cycles. Nothing in nature happens randomly. Night does not turn into day in an instant. A seed does not bloom in a single gesture. Healing does not impose itself. It reveals itself little by little when there is space, presence, and repetition. And among all symbolic and spiritual cycles, there is a number that runs through traditions, scriptures, and natural patterns. The number 7. 7 days, 7 lunar phases, 7 colors in the visible spectrum, 7 notes that form all music. From ancient creation narratives to contemporary studies on biological transformation, the number 7 represents a cycle of completeness, a passage, the necessary time for the invisible to begin becoming tangible. And when applied to the field of gratitude, this cycle gains transformative power. 7 days are enough to generate a micro-rupture in repetitive emotional patterns. According to studies on neuroplasticity, 1 week of conscious repetition is already capable of initiating the reconfiguration of synapses associated with emotional habit. This means that if you sustain a new vibration for 7 consecutive days, with presence, intention, and coherence, your brain begins to stop seeking the old and starts to recognize the new as familiar. But it is not just the brain. The field also responds. Spiritually, 7 days represent integration, the necessary time for what is subtle to take form, for what is vibration alone to begin structuring itself. When you practice gratitude not as a technique, but as a state, for 7 days, you begin to destabilize the old scarcity pattern that operated automatically. You create a new emotional ground, and on this new ground, the invisible finds space to manifest. The miracle then ceases to be an extraordinary event and becomes a natural consequence of a stable vibration. Because at its core, the miracle was never something that came from outside. It is a reflection of what has already begun happening within, a response of the field to your inner constancy. And constancy has rhythm, it has time, it has cycle. 7 days may seem like little, but in the quantum world, where vibration precedes matter, it is enough time to initiate a new energetic signature. It is enough time to prove to your body that the new has already begun. It is enough time for the universe to recognize your frequency not as an attempt, but as a vibrational truth. And when gratitude becomes truth and not effort, the impossible begins to approach. Not by magic, but by coherence. Because what you sustain internally inevitably becomes external, and 7 days may be the beginning of that return, of that invisible blossoming, of that silent dance between you and what has always been on its way. There is something deeply transformative in understanding that gratitude is not just a beautiful gesture or a spiritual ritual. It is language. It is energy. It is a biological response. When you feel gratitude with truth, even without any external evidence, you are sending a new code to your body, a new command to your electromagnetic field, and in that silent instant, your reality begins to be rewritten, not abruptly, but coherently. Bruce Lipton states that the body responds to the environment it perceives, and that environment is not what is outside, it is what vibrates within. Emotions such as fear, insecurity, and scarcity activate chemical circuits that reinforce old survival patterns. But when gratitude becomes familiar, it changes the inner environment. And with that, it also changes the destiny of your cells, your thoughts, your choices. You stop repeating the old, and you begin to generate the new. Joe Dispenza complements this understanding by saying that when the body gets used to elevated emotions as the baseline, and not as the exception, it stops seeking past triggers to feel alive. It no longer needs conflict to stay active. It no longer needs drama to feel important. It begins to create, to expand, to vibrate toward what has not yet been lived but is already available. True manifestation does not happen when you beg for change. It happens when you become compatible with it. And gratitude is a bridge between the now and what is to come. When practiced with presence, it does not just attract. It transforms who you are while you wait. And it is that transformation that sustains the miracle, so that it not only arrives, but remains. Perhaps until now, you have been waiting for signs, for answers, for relief. But what if all of that has been waiting for you? Waiting for your vibration to become compatible with what you most desire. The miracle often does not arrive because you are still vibrating as someone who does not deserve it, who is not ready, who still doubts. But when you stop asking and begin thanking, something aligns, something opens. Gratitude does not need reasons. It is the reason. When it becomes your natural frequency, and not a sporadic effort, the invisible begins to reorganize in your favor. You start living in such an intimate state of connection with the whole that what once seemed distant now responds. Because the frequency of gratitude is the language of creation, and those who learn to speak this language no longer need to shout for miracles, because they have already become the place where miracles happen.